Okay, so let me introduce you to our guest for the evening. Our guest, Emily A. Francis. She's an author, a radio host, a columnist, and a wellness expert with a vast education and experience. She is the author of 5 self-help books, bachelor's degree in exercise science and wellness with a minor in nutrition, and masters in science, masters of science in physical education with a concentration in human performance. Boy, is human performance lacking these days. Her commitment to total body, mind, and spirit wellness is her driving force. She believes in a whole body and proactive approach to wellness where balance is key and kindness paves the way. Well, we've got a lot to talk to Emily about tonight, and I can't wait to introduce you. So let's just jump to it. Emily, how you feeling?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. The only thing is that it is past 1 o'clock in the morning right now, and you are on the
way past my bedtime.
but and you are in the very exotic Mediterranean island nation of Malta.
Yeah.
But you hail from Atlanta.
I do. Yes.
That must have been some culture shock at first, huh?
It was massive.
How long did it take you to we'll get around to all the fundamentals, but how long did it take you to really start settling into the flow from coming from the East Coast of the United States into the Mediterranean like that?
Oh, well, you know what? I'm lucky though, because Malta speaks English. So that's one of the major pluses. So you have 2 languages here officially, English and Maltese. So as far as moving to a foreign country, I couldn't have been luckier in that regard, because at least I could get around.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Since you've been there for a few years, how is your Maltese doing these days? Any better?
No, it's Maltese is a really funny language. It's 70% Arabic. And so it's really hard to keep up, and it's very harsh, but about every 8 to 10 words is in English. So you can get the gist of whatever somebody's talking about and basically decide, like, do I want to enter this conversation or do I just want to hang back?
Wow.
And most people are kind and speak English around me.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that about Maltese. In fact, being that close to the to Italy, I always assumed that there'd be a lot of Italian speakers there. I never even looked into it.
You know what? This is funny. Everybody that's about 40 years and above and older are all fluent in Italian here in Malta, because when they were young, the only television was in Italian. So all the adults here are fluent in Italian speaking.
But now that everybody, you can get any kind of programming you want from the internet and from satellite.
The young people don't speak Italian.
No. Okay. Well, there you go. The generations, just one generation sheds the skin of the other in one way or another. And
it's true. But we are only 40 minutes from Sicily, or like, I think it's like 60 miles or something like that. And on a fast boat, you can get there less than an hour. And it's interesting because I went to Sicily and saw my gardener over there. Like, people are there.
Oh, so that's a pretty easy commute if you think about it.
Yes.
I mean,
they're actually doing they're building right now. They're testing it to do the charters, the ships, the quick boats.
The ferries.
Yeah, the ferries. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if we had better relations with Cuba, that's only 90 miles off the coast of Florida. So it's that you're talking Sicily's even closer. Like that.
Yeah. And they have a good relationship with Sicily over here. People go to Sicily just for the bakeries.
Well, that sounds great. As I'm sitting over here with my freshly brewed cup of coffee, I could really use a Sfogliatelle right now. So, well, you know what? We'll get into all the gluten talk in a little bit. First, let me just get into some of your background. Now, you went to, I see, the Atlanta School of Massage, and you specialized in manual lymphatic drainage. Now, can you talk a little bit about that? Because especially when it comes to things like cancer, we've all heard people talk about how key the lymph nodes are in determining how pervasive a condition like cancer can be. But what about just basic upkeep of the lymphatic system should we know about? Like what builds up that needs drainage and what prevents natural drainage?
Oh gosh, that's so much. Okay, so the Atlanta School of Massage, I finished in clinical and neuromuscular, and then went on to specialize in the Dr. Votter School for manual lymphatic drainage and combined decongestive therapy,
Okay.
which means I'm a lymphedema therapist. So I work on people that have dealt with cancer and have chronic swelling as a result of radiation treatment. So maybe too many lymph nodes were removed, or they were radiated, or they were severed. And so they no longer drain. Let's say a person had breast cancer and the major area of lymphatic is under the armpit. And let's say because of that surgery or radiation, that area no longer drains. And the lymphatic system is your plumbing. It's your internal plumbing system. And the way that lymph leaves the body is through your urine. So a lot of people always wonder that, like, if you're getting this much stuff down, where's it going? You urinate the lymph fluid out, but it's in the blood and plasma. And we do a thing for people that have gone through cancer. So I won't treat anyone in active treatment for cancer because you're in that plumbing system. So now you're speeding up. You can actually speed the growth of tumors and things that are not treated. So there's a huge half and half divide on this subject. I personally will not treat someone who's undergoing chemo currently because any chance that I could make something worse, I'm not touching it. If they're in remission or if they're terminal, are the only times I'll treat. And in remission, if they have the lymphedema, that comes way after the cancer stuff.
Okay.
And then it's a chronic swelling. So they actually have to wear a day compression garment and a night compression garment, which is different, every day for the rest of their life. So lymphedema can be managed, but never reversed.
Gotcha.
But lymph, like you asked, like if you're a healthy person, people that have acne could get lymphatic drainage. If you're overcoming an illness, lymphatic drainage. We do amazing things in the liver, and in the diaphragm area. It's really cool. But here's what I think is really interesting for someone who has no idea. When you go to massage school, you learn all of your endangerment sites, meaning all those soft areas that you should never massage. And then in lymphatic work, that's where you treat, is in all the endangerment sites where all of it is got the blood, arteries, veins, and lymph going through. So you're doing the armpits, you're doing the ribs, you're doing the abdominals, you're doing the inguinals, which is the high inner thigh triangle area that in a regular massage you would never touch. And that's how we move that fluid. And it's a skin stretching technique. So I will also say a lot of people claim to be lymphatic drainage or lymph therapists. And there's a lot of stuff at the spa, and it's like feathery, sort of silly, and it's not really based on science. And I don't understand why so many people get away with that, to be honest, because the lymphatic system is a negative system. You have to clear the pathways. So if somebody comes in and says, my leg hurts, and somebody starts on your leg, they have no training, literally no training. If you don't open the neck first, get off the table for lymph, because it has to be opened here and then into the armpits and then into the ribs, into all those sites, the inguinals, they all have to be opened so that the flow of exit can actually be arranged.
It's so intricate, and again, it's something that we only hear about. You want to talk about ignorance and the poor nature of our education. You would think that we would spend most of the time that we ever had spent in school learning about our bodies. Things like this that are not just on a springtime test one day in 1994. That's all I ever was told about the lymphatic system. And then, but this is huge. It's really, I wish that education was more based on this.
I did. You know what? It's so funny you say that, because yesterday I was doing my yoga practice and I came upstairs and started writing basically an intro to your body for young people. Because in February, I'm teaching my daughter's school meditation here in Malta, because they're much more open to this stuff. And so I'm teaching all of the level 7 kids meditation. But I started writing down like information about, instead of meditation, I'm going to teach them tricks of the trade to, one, be introduced to their body more effectively, and two, understand that the mind, not the brain, but the mind, the thoughts, and the breath, they're married. They're married to each other. You control one, you control the other. So if someone's going to take a test and they get super nervous, what are some easy tricks they can do to calm and integrate that marriage of mind and breath? And I was just writing these things because wouldn't it be nice to have an intro to your body from a very young age and continue it, instead of only if you specialize? And I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. I was in my friend's kitchen. This was a couple of years ago, but it was so humorous to me. And I had this weird stitch that felt like it was in my liver and it made me nervous. And I said, oh my gosh, I just felt this cramp. I hope it's not my liver. And she goes, that's not even where your liver is. And I looked at her and I said, that's exactly where your liver is. And she goes, oh, I don't really know. I just was trying to make you feel better. And I thought, oh my gosh, until I went to massage school, even with a degree in exercise phys, I didn't understand the body until I went to massage school. And now I cannot imagine operating life, just daily life, not knowing where, in accordance to the law of body, my organs are situated.
Well, Emily, I talk about this from time to time when it comes up in conversation. Uh, it's even for professionals. It's one thing that we all walk around and we're by and large, on average, very disconnected to how we're feeling and understanding, what hooks into what and what could be triggering certain types of physical sensations or whatever the hell's going on. We have limited ways of diagnosing ourselves because, like you said, there's no education.
We don't know it. We literally walk around all the time having no clue. And so when we have certain random pains, nothing's random in your body. Your body is an expert communicator. But we are like idiots. We don't have the guide. We do. I mean, if you bought my book, but honestly, the manual, there's so many manuals out there and so much study about the body. And honestly, no matter which road you take into specialization, you're still never going to get the full picture.
And that's the big point I was just about to make, is that even with professionals, everybody is so over specialized. Specialization, I think, is such a terrible thing, because you go to a doctor now, and you say, hey doc, I have a problem, and they refer you to like a pointer fingernail specialist. Everybody specializes in one very thing. You ask them anything outside of the bounds of what they specialize in, and everything falls to pieces. And then it's just
because it's not in their scope of practice, and they're not allowed to say. Yeah. That's really where it's gotten. Honestly, I do not miss American healthcare. It is one of the things that I really don't miss, is that approach, because here in Europe and in Malta, first of all, everything's covered. I mean, I threw a fit in the pharmacy to fill a prescription because I thought it was a joke. It was like €4 or something like that for medicine. And I was like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? Are you seeing the prescription right? And even my mom came to visit me here, and she had kidney stones, and we had to take her to the hospital for 2 days and a night. And it was during COVID, so I couldn't even stay with her, which was horrifying. And she didn't have traveler's insurance, and they don't take any U.S. insurance. And I'm on the phone with my sister saying, it's going to be at least 10,000. It's going to be, they did 2 CT scans. They did all this blood work. I mean, it was just crazy. And I'm flipped out. And then we leave, and the whole entire bill for this visitor, €1,000. 2 days in the hospital.
Not bad.
Blood work, scans, foods. They fed her. I mean, I was like, my husband was like, hurry, pull out the credit card and get the hell out.
Right.
We were so afraid they were going to change their mind or go, oh, that's just the copay. There's not. And the copay here is it. You're done. So if you go to like your eye doctor for my kids, I think I pay $60 and you're totally finished. There's no follow-up.
Not too shabby at all. I was going to ask you about why you picked Malta out of all the places out there, but it doesn't really, I think that comes through as you are talking about this stuff, and what you're going through and what you've worked on over the last few years. So let me just ask you this, as far as, because we've already brought up stress. Now let's talk about lifestyle. Can you talk a little bit about the pace? And you also talk about the differences between the medical systems, but talk a little bit about the pace and the priorities of life in Malta compared to America. Do people, okay, well, just start with that in general.
It's funny. I have to say, first of all, I will just say my husband's company offered us the opportunity to move over here. So we didn't pick it. There was honestly, we had to research once it was on the map, but I really wanted to move. I wanted to move to a GMO-free country. That was really my priority in life, was to get out of where the food was so dangerous. And it fit all of our boxes. But anyway, it's funny because in Malta, especially, you cannot imagine how many people smoke. So you have this half the side of, it's the Mediterranean living. And the thing about Malta is it's a tiny island. So we eat predominantly locally, because if the port shuts down, we have to be able to sustain. So here in vibrant colors, you eat local and seasonal. more than I've ever understood it in my life. Because in America, you get your hands on everything. Here you don't. It's seasonal. So even last night we went to sushi and they served this one with strawberries because, oh my gosh, the strawberries here are orgasmic. And I'm not kidding. They're unbelievable. And it's totally different even than an organic strawberry in America. And but last night they said, I'm sorry, but we're not in season for strawberries. So would you want to have a pineapple or a mango or, something else, but you knew it was going to be imported and it's fine. A lot of foods come from Italy, especially, and Greece. So our Greek yogurt is Greek. So that kind of stuff's really, really cool. It's also 300 days of sunshine here in Malta. So everybody's outside. And it's weird because you'll see people out walking, smoking. The average lifespan is more than 10 years longer than in the United States. And the interesting thing, and my mom pointed it out, and now I can't unsee it, you cannot imagine how many older men live in Malta because people live older here. And a lot of people work through their life. They don't just look for 65 and retire. They look to do something else. They're busy. People here are busier, but with purpose. And I always say they live simpler, not easier, but simpler. And people are much more laid back. So there's a lot of you can't stress this. You can't control it. Don't stress it. It's nice. It's nice.
I have two things that just came to mind. Number one is what I felt when my producer Krista passed along your website to me, and I said, "Oh wow, the website alone relaxed me." Where there you are showing off your book in front of this emerald colored water on a day in the picture that looks to be about, I would say, 78 degrees with a slight breeze. That's what I would estimate. But I just wanted to be there, in just one of those little tiny dinky boats. But the other thing is, today I was speaking with a good friend of mine who's a frequent guest on this show, who's also a nutritionist. His name is Jay. And I told him that you were coming on. I said, hey, take a look at all of our stuff. Let me know what you're thinking there. And we started talking about you and just Mediterranean living a little bit. And he said that perhaps one of the most, this is a quote I had to take down from him. He said, perhaps one of the most confounding variables when he's talking about nutrition and longevity and people's quality of life. He said, one of the most confounding variables is the community and purpose-driven aspect in health. So often we attribute everything to diet, like the supposed blue zones. And for everybody out there, a blue zone is, for those of you who don't know, are there areas with unusually large populations of people living beyond 100 years. And he said that we often attribute everything to diet, but daily movement, community, and purpose is a huge reason these people tend to live long with less disease. It's not necessarily the olive oil. That's the first thing I thought about here when you said that.
It's funny. I have two responses to that. It is absolutely a healthier way of life because we eat longer and socially. And the Mediterranean diet this is what I found out when I moved here. That's an American type of slang term, the Mediterranean diet. It's not actually a diet of food. The Mediterranean diet is a way of life. It is the way that we live life over here in all aspects. That's what he's saying. The other thing that's funny, though, is I've become wildly in love with olive oil over here ever since. So I write for the local tourism magazine now in Malta. And my job, I have a column called Emily in Malta, kind of take on Emily in Paris. But I interview local farmers, fishermen, and chefs about the way that these local GMO-free foods are grown, harvested, and produced and prepared. And it's the most fun I've ever had in my life. And honestly, I don't get paid a dime. I don't have a work visa, and so I'm not in practice anymore for massage over here. But my husband's company moved us over, and that was sort of the trade. And I thought to myself, what makes me happy? What do I want to learn about and explore in my whole new life? And so I started calling the local magazines, and people didn't give me the time of day. And then I called the tourism magazine. I wrote to them and I said, I'm a local American author. I want to write an article. And I said, no, scratch that. I want to write a column. Yeah. And then the editor wrote me back and she goes, full disclosure, we'd kill to have you. We can't afford you. And I wrote back and I was like, full disclosure, I'm willing to work for publicity. I need to build my brand over here. And so we ended up on the phone and I talked about my love of Maltese local potatoes, which honestly, until you actually taste the difference, it sounds so bizarre. But a U.S. standard American non-organic potato goes through 5 rounds of bleaching before it hits your plate. 5 rounds. The seeds are bleached. The soil is bleached. The potatoes are bleached. The amount of toxins that are on your potatoes is absolutely filthy and disgusting. And over here in Malta, it's like, well, it's local, it's GMO free. You're not allowed to spray with all that stuff. And when you pull it out of the dirt, which I got to do on my first interview, it looks fake. It looks like somebody washed them off, put them back in the dirt and said, here, pick this one, because it's so clean, because the soil is so different here. And there's a lot of alkaline in the soil over here because all of Malta is basically limestone. Every building is limestone, and the limestone pieces are in the soil, and it makes it sweet so you don't have to add sugar, and it adds the alkaline level to the soil. And so the potato thing, I thought it was going to be a one and done interview. And then all of a sudden the editor was like, would it be okay with you if our camera crew followed you and we put you on camera and you interviewed this farmer? And so it turned into a whole thing. And 3+ years later, if you go to ohmymalta.com and you go to cuisine, you can see pages and pages of Emily in Malta and all my farmers on videos, professionally shot. And I've gotten to pull artichokes, Jerusalem artichokes from the ground. I've gotten to pull globe artichokes, potatoes, all kinds of foods, prickly pears. But I got to interview a man for olive oil, and he is known as the godfather of olive oil. Jamie Oliver flew over here to meet him, and he even grows something called the sacred white olive that turns pink when they're ripe. But he grows what's called the Bidni, Bidni olive oil, and it's native only to Malta, and it has the highest level of antioxidants and the lowest level of gas in the world of any olive oil. And so it actually, they're using it at the hospitals now to test it on fighting cancer.
Really?
So it's, yes. And then I interviewed a Bidni olive oil farmer the following year. And he was saying he just was in Sardinia because it's a blue zone, and they do attribute the level of olive oil because you eat olive oil. I cook with I only have olive oil in my kitchen now. I barely use butter. I use olive oil for everything, and even my kids don't mind the taste anymore. So we've become major olive oil people. And he was saying in Sardinia that it's the quality of the olive oil that keeps people so healthy.
I'm
They use it on
looking
their
at
face,
these.
their
I'm looking
lips,
at
their
these.
chin. It's amazing.
These white.
Look up the
I'm looking at the white olives right now. The white.
Oh my gosh. And they turn this beautiful light pink, but really pink. And it's very sweet. It's a sweet olive oil. So I've become like wildly, I have now a love affair with olive oil. And I have planted 4 olive trees in my yard the first year we moved here. And this year was the first year we were able to harvest. And I got to, my kids and my husband and I, we pulled all the olives off the 4 trees and we took it down to the fishing village. There's a priest down there with an olive press. And it cost us €3 to get our olives pressed into oil. And then he served it to us, and I should go get it really. When you would take a break if you want, in a mass wine bottle, but it's full of olive oil that he gave us back to us. So I feel like it's doubly blessed.
Yeah.
With my olive oil. And honestly, like that night we called our boss and his wife because we all moved here together. And we said, we have our olive oil from our yard, come over. And we went and bought this rosemary focaccia bread the bread here they make every day fresh. And the government subsidizes the bread to not exceed €1 per loaf of bread so that everyone can afford good quality bread. And it goes bad in about 2 days because it doesn't have those chemicals and preservatives and leavening agents and things that make it stay. So the bread tastes very different here. So bread and olive oil, you've got a meal.
Well, that's that is one of the perks of living in a nation that is an island. You can do a lot of things like that. This is a lot of you're homogenous in a cultural way and stuff. You can do things like that for sure. Subsidizing bread in the United States would not work out in any way, shape, or form. But that is incredible that you're able to do that. And, I was looking through some of the preview pages on your latest book, The Taste of Joy, and man, was I ever shocked to see that Malta does not prioritize Lucky Charms cereal over steak at the top of your food pyramid out there. That food pyramid looked amazing.
Food pyramid is different. And honestly, you know what? I just got an email yesterday from my children's school saying that they are introducing a fruit and vegetable. They call these things schemes here, but it's not the shyster scheme. And they said fruit and vegetable scheme, they'll be washed. They'll be, there's no nuts in the school. They'll be washed. They'll be fresh and local, just to teach the children more about farming and fruits and vegetables. Are you guys, is that okay? Can we serve your children this food? You have to say yes or no. And in the break time at school, they have a gardening club and they teach the kids how to garden.
That's
This
direct.
is a regular school. This isn't some specialty forest school. This is actually a British school that's highly academic, and yet this is part of what they do.
Well, it's the only thing worth learning. I mean, are you not
True.
preparing? Are you not preparing? Is education at every level not there to prepare human beings to live more efficiently on Earth? You would think that being able to extract resources from the ground and know how you can grow things and that is just like basic relationship with our environment. But you were talking about eating seasonally, and I want to learn about this here, because I know what it is to eat seasonally in New York. I know when it's time that we're going to get the good tomatoes. I know when we're going to when the fall comes around, we transfer into squashes. I understand how that works around here. So when you talk about eating seasonally in Malta, I would love it if you can take us through some of the staple foods that become abundant locally throughout the year in Malta. Can you do that for us?
Yeah. So the summer is the most fun because it's your highest seafood over here. So you're in the fishing village, and we have a fish called lampuki. And lampuki is baby mahi-mahi. It's before they get over to the other side, over to the Atlantic Ocean. So they're babies here. And the world goes nuts for mahi-mahi. You'll see fishermen on the side of the road with their little boards, handwritten lampuki pie. So here in Malta, they do a lot of pies. They'll do a lot of seafood and spinach. They do a lot of vegetable pies, and the pies change according to season and what's in season. So I love the summer with lampuki. Also, so many of your berries and your fresh fruit grow from about March on. So fig season comes twice a year, starting from May. Prickly pear season comes in the end of summer. Almonds grow all down the roads. You see them. There's two kinds of almonds here in Malta. They are sweet almonds and they are rancid. They're really rancid, but they are used for a drink. So your tree, you have to taste them to figure out which almonds you have.
Wow.
My almond tree is the rancid one, unfortunately. So they're not that fun to eat. My friend's mom made us these almond cookies right from their almond tree in the yard. That's in the dry months, August, September. The winter months are your vegetables. That's where you get a ton of cauliflower and broccoli. It's where you get your sweet potatoes and your squash, the same stuff, pumpkin. But mostly all those warm months, that's when I think right around March, things start to really open up. And I know that there's a lot of bees here. Like you don't see them anymore in the States because there's certain sprays that are poisonous that are banned in the EU. So you still see bees everywhere here. So I know that I actually mostly do seasonal according to the bees, because there's like 1 month where only the caper flowers feed the bees. And capers, you can just go and pick from the bush. So once you can recognize the flower, you know where the capers are. It's so cool. It's really, really neat. Sun-dried tomatoes come in August. The regular greenhouse tomatoes are grown year-round. And then in the summer months, they are grown in the bush, which is fantastic. You lift up like a bush, and it's just rows and rows of these Roma tomatoes, so red and beautiful. And then they take them and slice them in half and just sprinkle with sea salt and lay under the sun for 3 days, and boom, you have your sun-dried tomatoes.
Oh.
Not a thing on them. Really spectacular. Artichokes is a winter vegetable. What else? I mean, I feel like I'm missing really basic things here, but they make cheeses from the goats. They keep a lot of goats and sheep on the island, and they do specialty cheeses called spenet, and it's a goat cheese-esque. It's actually goat and sheep cream cheese mixed together sometimes, or you can special order if you just want the goat or you just want the sheep.
I gotta interject here for a second, because it's what you're talking about. I just want to keep this in mind for people, because I have to keep reminding myself as I'm listening to you. I'm thinking, oh well, she must live on a 5-star resort, and this is just untenable for anybody to live like. And then I realize, uh, Malta is not a very fabulously rich
No,
nation, but like you were saying,
no.
it's simple
Yep.
because of its location. In many ways, there is imports and exports, but like you said, they are forced to really live seasonally and understand. This is something that a lot of nutritionists and a lot of people over here in the United States are trying to tell people that, yeah, you may not be able to produce the kind of food that someplace like Malta does, but every region has its seasonal way of eating, and that
True.
we need to be a little bit more in tune with these cycles, and that nature gives us these very fanciful and almost dessert like things to eat all the time. We don't think that way. So hearing you talk right now, I I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people with their eyes glazing over thinking like, oh, well, she lives, she's probably being
It
served handed. It sounds so exotic,
does.
you
And it
know?
is. I mean, I live in paradise. I really do. But it is bizarre because when we knew we were moving to Malta, we literally spent every night watching YouTube videos. And then we arrived and it didn't look anything like what we saw on the YouTube videos because the drive from the airport to our house, and we moved here during COVID. So we had to go directly into mandatory quarantine. So we weren't allowed to go visit the sea and all that. And so it looks very desert. It's very brown and it's very desert. And because Malta has such ties to the Middle East and to the Arabic culture, the foods are very Arabic influenced and the spices are totally different, but it's very brown. And when I first arrived, I thought, oh my God, what have I done?
Mm.
I know the stuff I've seen on YouTube is here. I know it exists, but this is really scary. It's really, I don't know where I'm living. I don't know where I am in the world. It was really an overwhelming arrival because it was just a straight shot and all you see is brown everywhere, brown, dirt. Everything is dirt. Now, the interesting thing here, though, is like the churches, they plant trees, apricot trees, almond trees, things that you can eat so that anyone can come and pick and eat. So everybody's fed. The walls here on the highways are actually plant walls. So they grow lettuces and different herbs. And you'll see these reds, like the red lettuce and the herbs down the whole wall because, again, they feed their people. So anyone that's hungry can come and pull from the wall
Jeez,
and be fed.
that's
And
wonderful.
I got to go to the prison. There's only one giant prison here in Malta, and it produces more bread than any other bakery on the island. And I was able to go into the prison and watch the residents, as they call them, bake bread.
Over here in the United States, and I know that you know this because you're not very. It wasn't too long ago that you're living here, but they arrest parents for allowing their children to put out lemonade stands.
Yeah, I saw that. That's so
I
disgusting,
mean,
honestly.
what you're talking about is just so commonsensical and so
Yeah.
you want to talk about good community involvement to just be able to
Oh
take
my gosh.
wasted pieces of land and just put an apple tree in or something like that and say
Exactly.
have at it
Help yourself.
I know.
Exactly. There's
Meanwhile,
a tree here, and it's called bombanella. It's baby pears, and they grow really. I have a huge bombanella tree in my yard, and they grow all over. It's interesting because the walls have prickly pears and almond trees and all these trees that just grow along the side of the road. Fig trees, they grow on the side of the road that I never would have recognized if I didn't fall in love with my farmers and learn so many things. Now I can recognize by the leaves what's going to be growing next over there. But honestly, my husband says this all the time. He always says, can you imagine being a child growing up here? Because think of the old Italian grandma. That's what's here. So children are embraced by the culture in a huge way. And in the summer, there are 60 festas. So you have the saints and the feasts and everybody comes to the church on the square and there's a different square every 20 feet and they have a different celebration. And then the food that's in season becomes a dessert specialty. They have a whole day for the strawberry season, everything's strawberry. And so the children are embraced, but I believe that this is how they have created an inclusive culture because they don't just invite who goes to church. They don't just invite who's local Maltese. It's open to the world, to the public. So I've just started to really enjoy some of these festivals because, to be honest, I've always been very afraid of big crowds because of, living in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And like I went to a huge festival here in downtown Valletta, and there were police presence everywhere, but it was also kids everywhere and all these amazing um, people were on stilts doing this crazy. It's carnival. It's what Mardi Gras was
Yeah.
based after, and so it's a 7-day or 2-week whole celebration. And we went to one of the carnival dances, and I couldn't believe how safe I felt in the crowds, like, and that my kids, that I felt comfortable bringing my kids. So they're really embraced over here in a way that we used to know 40 years ago.
A cohesive, yeah. To have any kind of culture in common is huge. Yeah, I mean, there's no two people on the earth that are exactly alike, but if there's something that people can hold in common as values, then you can build literally anything. And we had that for a while. You're right. But you did say something there about certain things that were banned in the EU that are not here in the United States.
Things.
Right. And that's exactly what I want to jump into. The differences in pesticides and GMO. What is this came in, I'm going to just start getting into some of the questions that came in from the audience. There's too many. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. But here's the first one up. This came from G925 out there. Says, what is the difference between oregano that can be bought in Europe and that is sold in the U.S. and, generally spices of all kinds from Europe and America? Well, I know this is going to open up a big can of, pesticided worms, but please talk about oregano in particular because.
Okay, so oregano is a medicine. It is medicinal, and it is, so in the Malta tradition, that the spices of life is a trifecta of 3 spices: basil, oregano, and thyme. That's your Maltese dish. So everything has basil, oregano, and thyme. And oregano is delicious here, but I will tell you this. The Greeks, there's a huge Greek presence over here. And our friends that own the Greek restaurant, he says to us, no, don't eat Maltese oregano. No, I send you home with the Greek, and it's just like my big fat Greek wedding. They really do talk like this. There are 2 kinds of people, Greeks and everyone who wish they were Greek. And you see that a lot in all the cultures here. But he sent us home with Greek oregano, and I have to say, it blew my sweet Maltese oregano out of the water. It tastes like medicine. It is so strong. It's almost unbearable. You really have to put it in with other herbs for it to tone down a little bit, but you can it's so pungent. And I've never experienced that with oregano in any other place.
Let's say
so. It's like Greek and then Maltese and then the States.
Let's say you felt a scratch in the back of your throat, and it's that scratch in the back of your throat. You're like, oh no, here it comes. Let's say you feel a cold or a flu just coming on, and you go to grab the oregano oil. How are you taking it? Because I don't know. It's just a drop in.
I'm going to have to interrupt you there and tell you that in Malta, we actually would skip and go for the carob because we're in carob season, which is flu season, and they do carob syrup, and that clears the lungs and the throat quickly. But neither here nor there. Carob is our jam. Oregano, I would put the oil on my feet, on the bottoms of my feet.
Not ingest it.
I could, but I would just do my regular oregano dry for my food because we use it in everything. And then if I were to do the oil, I would put it on the bottoms of my feet and probably down my spine.
Wow. Okay.
That's what I do for my kids. So when my kids are not feeling well, I'll pull out, I don't know if I'm allowed to say brand, so I won't, but I'll say the name of it, Thieves. I pull out my Thieves and I put it on the base of their feet and down their spine. And then I put socks on them and, that's it. On me, I put it down my throat. I put it down my chest. It's too strong for the kids that way.
But not ingest. You don't ingest the oregano? I thought that people ingest
I don't. Well, I mean, oregano oil, I'm sure people do, but I think you're talking about people that don't have access to really strong, pure ingredients that's in their food.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't need to do that.
Understood. That makes it good. And here, around Thanksgiving, I was reading an article. It was in the paper, and it was about a woman who was preparing for a trip to Europe. I think it was to Italy. And more specifically, she was preparing how her diet was going to be impacted by going out there because she eats gluten free over here in the United States,
Yeah.
and she was going to Italy, and she knew, she's like, I can't go to Italy and
And eat bread. Yeah.
I can't not indulge in some pasta and all this stuff. Anyway, the whole point of the article was that she was shocked at how not only did the eating these gluten loaded foods not destroy her gut, but she actually felt energetic better than she had before. So obviously, that was that was designed to make the reader wonder, for as much as it may benefit us to lean out our diets and maybe avoid gluten, there are definitely still stark industrial standards between the U.S. and the rest of the world that make things far worse than they have to be.
It's the glyphosate. Let me just say it. It's the glyphosate. It is the glyphosate that is sprayed on your wheat fields, that is made a fortune by Big Pharma, by Monsanto. It is so dangerous and so disgusting, and it's deplorable. And here it's banned. So when you have these, but now I will say this, I learned this the hard way. Malta has a full ban on GMOs. So if it is grown on Maltese soil, they cannot use those herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. But if it's imported, all bets are off. So if they brought in Quaker oats from America, then it's got the GMOs. So you still have to be smart. And it's sad because most people here assume that American food is so much better. They assume that everything American is so much better. Whereas when I lift up a label and I see US, I'm like, oh, no. Because I know what's banned and what's not. And I do miss some of the things. And by the way, for a week, Lucky Charms was here, made like a guest appearance, and it was 10 euros a box. Because, it's American. So they charge, quadruple. But it's the sprays. Unless you are truly celiac, the whole gluten-free thing isn't so much necessary. My children were on it. I have a child with some sensory issues. And when we were in the States, we were gluten-free. And I remember reading an article from a family that went to Europe, and their kids were gluten-free for years, and then all of a sudden ate the bread and pasta, and the mom was petrified. Oh my gosh, we have to start over. Because it takes 6 months to get gluten out of your body. 6 months. And you have to be 100% gluten-free for you to really see in access what your kids need and don't need as far as food is concerned and gluten. And the kids had no regression and no issues. And that was the seed that sprouted that I kept saying to my husband, I want to move. I want to move. I don't want to keep showing up to birthday parties with my own handmade cupcakes because my kids can't have that. Or, that stuff, it sucks. It sucks. And then you don't realize, but people that are gluten-free that are not celiac, but that have to do the gluten-free, do a lot of tapioca starch and potato flour and all these alternate flours that spike the blood sugar. So it's like you trade one illness for another.
It makes perfect sense. And I can see how that is just obviously that would be something that would spark those types of thoughts. When you realize how you have to really clamp down on a diet living in one place and then have this in contrast happen in another continent where the foods that you were so petrified of ever having your kids go near are not only not harming them, but they're thriving with that.
They're thriving. Nothing's off the table here. They can eat. They eat pasta. They eat all the stuff, the breads, and they enjoy it. And it's such a different. Here's the big thing for me. I take my kids to school in the morning, and I don't pray all day long that they come home. I know they're safe, and that is in my children's physical safety, and in what they eat, and in what they're consuming. Also, the children here are more feral, if I can say that. They're a little bit wilder out in the open because the parents are less. It's life 20 to 40 years ago here. There's not even voicemails on the phone here. Like my friend said to me, my best friend is from Brazil over here, and she goes, you know why we love it here? I said, why? And she goes, because we're living in the 1980s. I was like,
that's a
oh my
great way.
God, we are. I mean,
you're
like the cars, you're not trying to drive these super nice cars because the driving here is so bad that you just want to, you don't want to freak out over your perfect pretentious car. So a lot of people drive these little cars, and no voicemails on the phone. So, and if you want something done in Malta, you're going to have to show up in person because you are not going to get their attention on the phone, especially with my American accent. And that's been humbling, really humbling to be the foreigner. And it's made me realize how not as welcoming as I wish I would have been to people that were new to our country when I was in my home country. It doesn't mean that I wasn't nice and I wasn't welcoming, but I definitely didn't bring it in. And here we have parties every week, Sunday fun days at our house in the summer because we have a big pool and a big party area in the back.
Wow.
And I looked around. I was like, okay, I had friends from China and Russia and Greece and Brazil and, the list goes on. Italy and all these people are, and then local Maltese. And it's such a hodgepodge. And my friend from Turkey. And what we do, my husband's on the grill because he does competition barbecue in America. He's a major grill guy. But then all the people that come bring a side dish. So you have this French side dish and Brazilian side dish and, Greek and all Turkish. It's amazing what you get to eat and experience. But I've never been so international before. So
Well,
that part's really cool.
You're in the central hub of what used to be the superhighway of the known world. I mean, the Mediterranean was that was it. For a couple quite a few thousand years, the Mediterranean was all there was. That was the superhighway of everything, of commerce, everything. So yeah, in many ways, I can see how if you just add a little bit of modern technology, both transportation and communication, it's still going to have a wonderful congealing effect out there. Here's a couple more questions. Azure Skies says, can you please ask Emily, what would she add and subtract to a diet based on where you are? If you're out there in Malta and you're eating what you do seasonally, what foods would you add and or subtract for joint health?
For joint health, I would do a lot of oils and a lot of nuts because you want to lubricate those joints. So I would up my protein, but I would also add in like the lentils as my form of protein. There's a lot of issues. People either feel highly of high protein meat or high protein vegetables. So it really depends on who you are. But the olive oil, I have to say, the olive oil that you get in the United States just does not compare. So maybe think about going to some of those specialty stores and looking at country of origin for olive oil, and look for the Greek olive oil, the Spanish olive oil. The Maltese is really hard to find. The Italian olive oil. Look for the healthiest olive oils in the world. I would add in a lot. I've become really in love with dates, with dates. I eat dates a lot now, which is interesting to me because that always was not a food for me then.
Okay.
But a lot of moisturizing foods, lubricating foods. So get rid of unhealthy butters. Throw margarine out. Margarine should not even exist. But I would do the healthy fats, the healthy oils for sure, the healthy fats.
There's a lot of questions here from people that are a little redundant, but it's obvious they wanted to know the same thing. And it was really about how, how do people compare fitness-wise between Atlanta and Malta? I bet obesity doesn't exist in Malta. Also, things like that. Well, your favorite I think that really is all encapsulated in what you said before. Just the lifestyle changes, how things are not easy, but they are simple. And I have to imagine there's not a very, very big obesity problem out there.
It's not like you see in America, but Malta is the most obese of the Mediterranean countries. Can I just say that?
Well,
and it's because we love our pastries. We love our pastries. We love our foods. The Maltese, they throw down. They party a lot. They eat well, but they also eat big. And there's a food here called pastizi. And you have pastizi little stores on every corner of Malta. And those pies I was talking about. So they do a lot of mushy peas and a lot of ricotta and a lot of sort of vegetable loving pies, but you're still eating a lot of sweets. They do a ton because of all those festas. But on the flip side, they're outside all the time. So you're walking around. Like I never used to walk after I eat, and now it's a natural habit because you have to. So you kind of walk around a little after each meal. So yes, you still see larger than you would see in, say, like Italy, but it's nothing like what you see in the States.
Okay.
Like the clothing sizes are very different. I don't like shopping here. It makes me feel bad.
Well, I could get that. Now I have one more question for you on this side of the intermission, and then I have on the other side. I would love to keep you for another 10 to 15 minutes because
Love it.
I
Yeah.
want to ask you a question about autism. I know
Okay.
you've written about that. I want to ask
I have.
about mind-body connection and healing in that respect, human intention experiments. And so I one or two bigger questions that I want to ask you on the other side of the intermission. But before we go, here is a question from Crude IT Guy. And he says, and I guess we could have, we'll just see what you say. Does the Mediterranean diet, that is not only the seasonal eating, but also the lifestyle, does it work better on people with heritage from that region? Or is this something that anybody can adopt?
I would actually assume, I think that's a great question. And I would have to say, I think that genetically they're designed to follow something like that, more so than maybe somebody from Iceland or Poland, that your body's sort of predisposed to more cold people that are Mediterranean, because the people that are here, yeah, you follow. It's kind of like eat right for your type. Some people believe in it, some people don't. The blood type diet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge believer in it. Huge. You can look at people's bodies and go, oh, they're probably an A. They're probably a natural vegetarian. They're probably an AB where they should be more plant-based than meat. And O is a natural meat eater. So a person that would come from places like the Mediterranean are very likely genetically predisposed to following a diet more so than maybe your average person.
Well, that's very interesting, and I know that is a very controversial thing there. The whole blood type diet. I know I have friends of mine that looked into it. They don't really see any credence, give it any credence. I researched my own blood type after a while. I wanted to see what I should be eating according to that work. So I know a little bit of something about it, but we have a couple of bigger questions I want to tackle with you on the other side. I'm having a great time over here with Emily Francis, EmilyAFrancisBooks.com. The link is in the description over there. Emily, so you want to stick with us for another 15 minutes or so? All right. I'm going to put you on mute and we'll bring you back on the other side of the intermission. If you wanted to go grab your, what you want?
Olive oil?
Yeah,
you go get the olive oil.
You go get the olive oil. You'll have about 2 minutes to go do that, and
okay.
We'll see you back on the other side.
I'll go get it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please join us over on pilled.net. The link is in the description below, or you can go to quitefrankly.tv. If you're on YouTube, Rumble, Rockfin, all the links are right there. I tweeted them out. I gabbed. I truthed. I did all that stuff. I hope you come on over because, again, there is no paywall. It's very, very simple, and I love hanging out with you all. There's nothing like chilling out on a chilly night in January, talking about something that puts your heart on a beach somewhere in the Mediterranean. So I like it. And I'm also thinking about ways that we can bring Malta to us. But the big thing is, how the hell do we get away from a government that doesn't see glyphosate and things like that as the existential threat that it is? That's the biggest issue right here. But more of this, more with Emily, and then your calls and some other fun stuff on the other side. Please join us on quitefrankly.tv or pilled.net. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we're over here with Emily Francis. Emily, I asked to unmute you over there, so just take a look at that and you'll be right back in. Yeah, right. No doubt about it. So I just went and welcome back everybody on the other side of the break. Emily, because I'm broadcasting from Studio B in my home tonight, I was able to do something I'm not able to do at Studio A, and that is go out into the kitchen and get myself a refill of my coffee. And my wife is walking through the kitchen and she says, "So you want to move to Malta?"
Yes.
I said, you know what? Whether or not I want to move there permanently is secondary to the fact that all I keep thinking about is the fact that you don't have to worry about the GMO thing. The fact that you at least have a government that is wise enough to say, we are not going to allow this kind of chemical culture to be so pervasive. And that's just the one thing that I'm really jealous of.
That was number one on my list. And just here's my olive oil. It's in the wine bottle though.
Nice.
And if you'll let me, I'm going to pour a little shot just so people can see how green this is, because I don't think most people get their hands on such pure color.
Oh,
So
wow.
can you
Oh,
see?
yes.
It's very different. And that's from my backyard, so that's quite pretty.
Compared to our golden tinctures over here, that is a much deeper, richer color, no doubt.
It is, and it's thick and it's sweet. But if I did it in this green bottle, you wouldn't know because the bottle's green. So I wanted to pour it just so you could see. And people here, like I just finished, I spilled a little bit, so I rubbed it on my hands and then I rubbed it up my arms because the farmers here use it on their lips. They use it on their skin, and these men are in their 70s, 80s, and they have this gorgeous skin. So I've started using olive oil on my face.
Oh, well, why not? Somebody once told me who was in the skincare. I have a couple of friends who've been in skincare, especially organic, homeopathic, that kind of those lines of products. And they once told me, Frank, if you can't eat it, don't put it on your skin.
That is what I did the pediatric massage training when I was pregnant. And the person that taught the class, she said two things to me that I will never forget. She started the class. She said, I want to open by saying Johnson & Johnson is the devil. Don't put anything from Johnson & Johnson on your baby's skin. And she said, and don't put anything on your baby's skin that you wouldn't eat. If you would not pick it up and eat it, do not put it on the skin. But I also have to say over the years that I learned that coconut oil is fabulous for the skin unless you're prone to eczema, and then it exacerbates eczema.
Really?
So, yeah. And I learned that the hard way with my daughter. And then people were like, yeah, you didn't know that? And it's like, no, why would I know this?
I don't
Everybody
know that.
just talks about coconut oil. But if you have eczema, it makes it much worse. So know your audience, know the skin that you're working with. And like for me, I just poured the olive oil back in. So now I'm rubbing it up my arms. You never want to waste. Like olive oil here is gold.
Yeah.
We don't want to waste a single thing of it.
Hey, if you can put, those little tiny sampler Jack Daniels bottles that you can buy, if you ever come across any of those, just dump one out, put a little bit of your olive oil in, put it into a bubble pack and send it to me.
You know what? If you want, you can give me your address and I will send you 100 milliliters. That's the carry-on size of the Bidney olive oil from the Mediterranean Culinary Academy, where they harvest the Bidney with the guys that I work with.
Well, you're going to have to let me know how much the shipping is on that, because I just tried to send something that was, I think, about a half a pound to Australia. Somebody had won a super chat raffle with me last year, and it cost me $200.
No,
it was
no,
nuts.
no. It doesn't cost that much. But if I send you the olive oil, I'm going to have to send you the book too.
Okay.
Because there's a lot about Bidney in there. But it's so delicious. It's actually spicy. It's not your average olive oil. Bidney is so high in antioxidants and polyphenols, and so low in acid that it tastes hot like pepper in the back of your throat.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let me get to a couple other things over here.
Okay.
Here's about autism. This one is from Rev in the chat room. He says, one of your books, Emily, is about autism. And of all the subject matter covered in the book that I see, I would love it for you to address some basic thoughts on the ideas of prevention and remediation, because Western medicine is insistent that there is no autism trend that could be prevented, that detection is just revealing what was always there. So when you say prevention and remediation for autism, how do you approach that?
Well, I used to be really loud about this stuff, and then I got really nervous because, especially in the United States, the government can be really dangerous.
Very dangerous.
So here's what I would say. Two things. If I could go back in time, there is a mouth swab, an oral mouth swab, where you can check your children's genetics. And what you want to test for is something called the MTHFR gene mutation. So a lot of people will say it's luck of the draw if your child will have a negative response to vaccines, okay? But it's not luck of the draw. Are they do they have a genetic mutation that puts them in the danger zone? So that's one thing. I would go to for me, we went to a pediatric geneticist and had that thing done, but you get it done. Just get the MTHFR test. Because even here in Malta, I went to their vaccine specialist here and started asking all these questions. And I said, my daughter has an MTHFR gene mutation. He had to Google it. I was so mad. And I was like, you can't call yourself a vaccine specialist. You can't. If you don't know that word, we're done. We're done with this conversation because you've lost me and all of my respect.
Do they have the kind of schedules out there like we have over here?
No,
I mean, because that's the other thing.
Nothing like that. That's in the EU, they use different adjuvants into the vaccines than the United States. So things that are used in those in the US are banned here. So that's one thing. Two, they don't have the schedule that they do in the States. They do not push that kind of numbers, and they don't push that many of individual things. So that's something big too. For me, craniosacral therapy changed the life of my child. Her brain really reorganized. And I feel like self-correction, just the word self-correction, isn't taught to people in the States because the insurance industry is so massive that if it's not covered by insurance, somehow doctors don't push ever. And they don't even open up to study what's options. So that drives me crazy. I would have taken my child to craniosacral therapy first. I would have held off on certain scheduling of things that feel mandatory to you. I would have had a stronger voice from the start. I switched pediatricians later because I felt so bullied all the time. And I would spend like 2 weeks before each appointment. How do I say no? How do I say no? How do I stand up? How do I ask these questions? And I finally started over with a doctor that she sat me down and she goes, listen, if you come to my office and you've done your research and you want to abstain on something, I respect your decision. If you come into my office and you haven't done your research, I do not respect that decision and it's not going to work for us. I was really grateful to have a doctor like that.
Well, that's
so
good.
That I could actually have an open dialogue and go, well, I'm curious about this, instead of them saying, no, the answer is this. And if you don't, I'm going to call DFAX and they're going to take your kids. I mean, there's so much threatening behavior that happens over there. It's terrifying. So I wish I would have had a stronger voice. I wish I would have found craniosacral therapy sooner, but also with craniosacral therapy, I would have gone to the Upledger website and looked up Find a Therapist and found someone who's trained in pediatric, because a lot of people don't understand the value of how much training you need to touch a baby, to really touch a baby. So those things, that's what I would do. I would get the MTHFR tested. I would look at alternative therapies, and I would slow it down where I could. And that's, knowledge is power, but it's also dangerous, especially in these days.
Oh,
so
yes.
I'm less inclined to offer the way that I used to shoot off at the mouth.
No, I understand. And here we're over here, and I know that we're just meeting for the first time today, so you don't know too much about my show. But I'm on the avoid as much as possible boat. I have a 3-year-old daughter over here, and we're always very, very, very cautious about stuff. And I was very cautious with every conversation I had with my pediatrician. Thankfully, she is for informed consent, which is actually a rarity these days, as you said.
So rare.
It's so rare. There is a really abusive kind of taunting relationship that is formed between doctors and patients now, where if there is any kind of resistance, then suddenly you're breaking dogma at this point. You're going against the faith, and this is a priest that you're offending. So I understand, and of course you have this all published so people can take a look at it. That was from Rev. Here's another one. Me personally, I'm always very interested in experiments that measure the impact of human intention on physical matter. I've read several books on this, on stuff like this that I thought were so amazing, especially from a scientific standpoint of logging what intention experiments have come up with, whether it be the development of new motor skills just by practicing in your brain, or even the healing process. And you published a lot on the mind-body aspect to healing. So I wanted to know, when it comes to breath work and hypnotherapy or homeopathy and the like, outside of kicking a smoking habit or working through anxiety. Have you ever been able to attribute a person's recovery from a serious illness to spiritual and herbal remedies alone?
Um, I don't know. I have a person in my mind right now that I have to say they had a particular aggressive cancer and their body was not open. It was resistant to the chemo that they had to have to save their life. And their oncologist said, I want you to call this girl, me, and I don't know what she does. I don't know how she does it, but see if she can get your body to take that chemo because that's the only way you're going to survive this. And so she came to me and we did Reiki, we did energy work, and I just let her talk her way through her body. And through that situation, her body released in such a way that she was able to take that chemo. And she's like 15 years in remission.
Wow.
And I was there. I saw what can happen when your body is allowed to self-correct. It's nothing that I did. People, they hear this kind of story and I can share this story because I actually got her permission and it's in the whole body healing. But to watch, it was like energetically watching the stories that she's told herself unwind. And I'll say this, she got sick very quickly. A person in her family had been incredibly insulting to her body when she was very young, and she had no memory of it. And then when they got sober and made amends, they came and apologized, and she was diagnosed with cancer within 3 months.
Wow.
It was that fast. So I believe that the emotional health can cause or cure. Just like in yoga, they believe your breath can cause or cure. I believe that the state of being in our energy body and our emotional body, which are not the same thing, have to be in a state of open to receive so that your body can auto-correct. But you have to provide the pathways for that. Herbs I love. I also think it's a dangerous game to play if you're facing an illness to not be open to both sides. Don't put science away just because people have gotten so dirty with it. Don't, because it's dangerous. And what I've seen in my practice, because I've worked with cancer for so long, is the really staunch holistic, not turning to the other side until it's way too late. And then they decide that's the reason that they died or that's the reason that something happened. You got to walk the middle. You got to go with what you think, but take from both. Go Eastern, go Western. Be smart and be safe and take care of your body, your mind, your health, your emotions. And that means being aware that there is fantastic healing remedies on both sides.
Yeah, it's a terrible terrible thing to have to make choices in, because there is especially so much conflicting information, and people are very emotional about one way or another to go, and there is not a lot of middle ground. And
the middle ground is where you're going to be saved. Honestly, the middle ground is where you're going to be saved. That hardcore. I have a dear friend who actually lives in Connecticut, who's a many times over world champion in Tai Chi, in martial arts. And he was diagnosed with colon cancer, and he sat down and he did a video for everyone. And he said, listen, I understand that I live in a world of very holistic healing. I've been to Chinese medicine school. I'm an acupuncturist. I've studied this my whole life. But I'm asking you not to come to me with all your people that can help. You have to let me find the path. And he has been saving his own life, and he's coming through, and he's following the advice of his doctors, but he's also practicing high meditation and Tai Chi. There is such a beautiful symbiotic relationship when you cut out the middlemen of people and really go to your doctors, go to those specialists. That's when you need that nail specialist or whoever it is that's dedicated their life to the one area that you need right now. And so I believe that you do as much research as possible. Look for third-party, non-dominant research where the pharmaceutical companies were funding it. Get out of that. Do the double-blind studies, things like that. But then at the end of the day, take in as much information as you can and then sit with it. And your body will tell you what things to follow.
Emily, this has really been a wonderful time with you tonight. It's a nice break, a nice exotic break from all the rigmarole of the headlines and everything else. Been thinking about beaches in far off lands and white olives and so many great things tonight. But I would love to know, just as we're wrapping up here, how can people find your work? I know that you are also a broadcaster. Do you broadcast on a set schedule? If so, I know that it's all in a Maltese time zone. So let everybody know exactly how they can find you and the best way to keep in touch, because, I would love to have you back one day. But for now, it's a long winter, you know?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm at Emily A. Francis Books on Instagram and Emily A. Francis Book, afrancisbooks.com. You can find me on Facebook. I host a radio show on Healthy Life Radio. That's healthylife.net. Every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's out of California. It plays in 135 countries around the world, and it's called All About Healing. And we talk about all about healing because you can. There is amazing things out there, and you're allowed to have yours.
Thank you so much, and that's great. That's great to know that it's broadcast in Pacific time, so even at 7 a.m. my time, I'd be able to listen to it.
Yeah, it's 1 o'clock p.m. your time. So it's 10 a.m.
I'm sorry,
California,
I always do
1
this.
p.m. Eastern time,
always
and then 7 p.m. Central Eastern, me. So it's now at my dinner time. So I hosted that a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 o'clock in the morning here in Malta.
Sometimes it does feel like the world spins in reverse for me, Emily. And that's really what it is. All right. Well, thank you for everything. Have a wonderful rest of your month. Go get some sleep. Thank your husband on our behalf for allowing you to hang out so late at night, and have a wonderful day.
Cheers with my olive oil.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Take care. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's Emily Francis, and that was a really wonderful time.